We are gonna take a quick trip to Sicily. We're making pasta alla Norma. And this is one of those perfect weeknight meals that is gonna make everyone happy. So it really is about the tomato, the texture of the pasta, a little bit of that cheese kind of singing inside there, but it is an homage of sorts to the eggplant. Can't wait to show you how it's done. So the first thing we're gonna do before we start anything for this pasta alla Norma is we're gonna get a pot of vegetable oil on the fire. We're gonna deep fry some eggplant when that comes up to about 300 degrees. Also, we're gonna get a pot of water on the fire as well in order to cook the pasta when the time comes. One of the things we're using inside this recipe is ricotta salata. Ricotta salata is fresh ricotta that's been salted and formed, and then it is nicely refrigerated. What I like to do with this ricotta salata, which is completely optional, you could use it as it's purchased, is I always take it, brush it with olive oil, pop it in about a 325, 350 degree oven for about 10, 15 minutes, depending on how big that chunk of ricotta salata is, and just to develop some flavor. Dry out that inside so it makes it perfectly grateable, but also kind of create this roundness of baked flavor of the ricotta itself. So it's a thing of beauty. We are gonna start right now by making some of the eggplant. What we're gonna do is this pasta alla Norma, if you're not familiar with it, is essentially pasta with tomato sauce, fresh basil, a little bit of eggplant, which is fried, tossed inside that. Really simple and straightforward, topped with ricotta salata. It's one of my favorite go-to dishes. I love it. So what we're gonna do, start with this eggplant. We're gonna need about 8 ounces or so for this dish. And what I like to do with this eggplant, I like the skin, but I don't love it, right? So I create this zebra stripe on the exterior. So I get a little of the skin and I get a little bit of no skin. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I got it just like that. We're gonna discard this skin. You could use it for some kind of frito misto or something like that if you'd like. I'm not gonna use it today. I'm gonna cut the ends off of this. And I'm gonna cut this about into 1-inch cubes, just like that. Now again, nobody's measuring these things. It doesn't have to be perfect. Get it as concise and close to perfect as possible. If you don't get it to be perfect, it's fine too. All good. We want it to be delicious, ultimately. So I'm gonna toss this eggplant in here. I cut a little bit more. Again, 1-inch cubes, plus or minus, doesn't matter. And I'm just gonna add enough salt to kind of think of this as seasoning the eggplant. A lot of people wanna add enough salt that it really extracts a lot of the liquid out. You wanna get some of that bitterness out of the eggplant, but really, for me, it's the opportunity to kind of take out some of the moisture, but also season this eggplant simultaneously. Some people will press this and let it sit. What I'm gonna do is just let it stay inside a strainer. So meet me back here in 15, 20 minutes or so after this eggplant has sat. Some of that bitterness is extracted from the eggplant. I'll see you right back here. Press pause. Okay, so this eggplant has sat for about 15, 20 minutes or so. You'll see that, it's a little wet. It has a good moisture content to it. Some of the liquid is dripped out here. What we want to do is we just want to dry it up a touch. I have this oil at 300 degrees, all right? I don't want to get this oil hotter than 300 degrees because I don't want it to fry too much. I don't want it to become brown. I want to start this process of cooking it. So kind of like that initial blanch, and then we'll fry it a second time at a higher temperature in order to get that perfect the perfect texture on the exterior, which is nice and brown, golden, and then the inside will be nice and fluffy, like the perfect French fries, so to speak. So what we'll do is I want to be very careful with this because, as I said, it's very hot. We've dried this eggplant off nicely. We're going to put this directly inside the oil. Again, it's at about 300 degrees. Just get some of that initial fry on, and you could hear that sizzling away. Not too hot, not too cold. There we go. And again, we just want to cook this eggplant all the way through. Shouldn't take more than 7 minutes or so. Oil is frying away. Simultaneously, I have this water boiling for the pasta. The pasta we're going to use today is called tortiglioni. Tortiglioni is essentially kind of like a baby rigatoni. If you can't find tortiglioni, it's perfectly fine. You could use regular rigatoni. You could use penne as well. I happen to like a pasta like this, which the sauce kind of fills up on the interior and it gets that additional pop of flavor. I love the texture of a tortiglione. I love the mouthfeel of it. And also I love the way it kind of scoops up all the sauce that you're cooking in. It's something that I really like. It's a pasta that I like to have around. This eggplant is cooking. As I said, it's about 300 degrees. I'm going to turn this heat up and adjust it. It's one of the fun things about being able to have a pot of oil on your stove. You can adjust that temperature as it's needed. So it's cooking away nicely. When I drop the eggplant directly in that oil, the temperature drops significantly. So I want to make sure that I'm kind of compensating and getting it back up to 300 degrees as quickly as possible. But I don't want to take it too far. So I'm keeping an eye on this thermometer that I have inside there. So, all right. And again, I just want to cook this all the way through. I don't want to get a lot of color on it. It's really about blanching this. We'll get color later. We'll worry about that afterwards, but this is the initial step of blanching the eggplant. For me, eggplant has to be cooked all the way through. I don't like that bitterness and almost that itch, that mouth itch that it creates when it's overly bitter. So I really feel like this is, cooking it twice like that is necessary so that it really cooks all the way through and you get that nice fluffy interior when it's done the right way. Simultaneously, while that's cooking, I'm going to get ready for the sauce. So I'm going to have this eggplant cooking. I'm going to take just 1 clove of garlic and we're going to crush it. Perfect. So I could prepare all these things now so we don't have to do it later. 1 clove of garlic crushed. I have a touch of oregano here. I have some fresh basil, extra virgin olive oil. These tomatoes, now if you notice, it's not a can of tomato, it's not even a tomato sauce. This is a strained puree of tomato, 100% tomato. These are really good flavor. It doesn't have this flavor of citric acid like a lot of cans of tomatoes have. That's why I like the stuff in a box. A lot of people, when they make tomato sauce at home, they'll always say, well, I need to compensate for the acidity of the tomato by adding sugar. First of all, normally if I'm making tomato sauce, I use fresh tomatoes, plum tomatoes, or I use something like this, which doesn't have citric acid. So you don't need to counteract that citric acid, that acid component, by adding sugar to it. So there's nothing that needs to be balanced out. Tomatoes, as they stand, with nothing added to them, is kind of the perfect flavor profile as it is, right? That perfect balance of acidity, freshness, and sweetness. So I'm going to pull this eggplant out. We are at about 7 to 8 minutes of cooking this eggplant. It's cooked all the way through. It doesn't have color on the outside. We will get the color later when we turn up the oil temperature. But I'm just going to add it on on some paper towels here so that oil can drip, all that residual oil can drip off. We're going to cool it down and then we're going to fry it up a second time so that it gets that beautiful fluffy center, beautiful crispy texture, brown, golden brown on the exterior, and it's going to be craveable. You're going to want to eat these little eggplant like potato chips. They're just absolutely wonderful. So in the meantime, I'm going to let that cool. This will take another minute or so. I'm going to get this oil up to about 350. And then I'm going to put this eggplant back inside and fry it a second time. So if you want to meet me back here in 5 minutes or so, that's great. You could just press pause. I'll be here waiting for you. So we are back. The temperature of this oil is about 350 degrees. I'm going to put this eggplant that's been blanched in 300-degree oil back into this oil to finish cooking. First thing I'm going to do is take into consideration that there may be a chance that this may overboil. So I want to be very cautious, and I'm going to shut this oil off for safety precaution. And you can notice that this eggplant is completely cooked. I'm going to fry it up nice. I want to be careful, as I said, I don't want it to potentially boil over. So that's why I shut that oil off. Now I'm going to turn it back on. Again, it's about 350 degrees, this oil. And turn it down so it doesn't get too hot. Cook this up. So you see how it's browning? It's already cooked through. So now that we brown it, the interior that's already cooked is now going to become nice and fluffy, just like a perfect French fry. So I have some more paper towels here that we're going to put on top to drain that eggplant once it comes out. That'll take another minute or so just to get nice and brown. We don't want to get it too brown, but we do want to develop that flavor. An eggplant, I would say, is known for its inherent bitterness, which is one of the things that Italians love, that bitter flavor. That's why it's so popular in Italian cooking, particularly in the south of Italy. And this pasta alla Norma is your kind of typical Sicilian. It identifies as Sicilian, I would say. That's almost done. What I'm going to do, as soon as that's finished, I'm going to pull the oil away, and then I'm going to clean up this situation a little bit and then start the sauce. And that's when everything starts to move really quickly. So you get that beautiful texture. If you look at this eggplant as it's frying, it almost looks like it's puffing a little bit. That's what you want, because the interior, that means the interior is also cooking really nicely and releasing a lot of its inherent moisture. So that's how it becomes nice and fluffy on the inside, nice and brown on the outside. It feels like the eggplant is almost completely empty on the inside, right? Like it's just so, it's so fluffy and light. That's what you want. I don't want it to get too dark. I'm going to pull it out of the oil right now, put it on paper towels. I'm going to spread it out nicely because I don't want the heat from this eggplant to make it too moist. So I'm going to keep it nice and spread out. And I would do, if I had a lot of eggplant, I would do multiple pieces of paper towel, because if it's on top of each other, it'll start to not be so crispy anymore. It'll start to kind of wilt, and we don't want that. So I'm going to move this oil to the back and let it cool down. I'm going to put this saute pan on the fire. The eggplant is here. Clear this up a touch. I have the ricotta salata, which is nicely toasted. I just cooked it in the oven at 325 degrees or so for about 15 minutes. I am going to have in this pan, in this saute pan, I'm going to a little bit of extra virgin olive oil, just enough to cover that pan, just enough to cover the bottom. Some fresh basil here as well, and the tortiglioni. So as this pan is heating up, I'm going to turn that down to about a medium-low heat. As this pan is heating up, I'm going to add the tortiglioni directly to the pasta water. But first, I want to make sure that I salt this pasta water so that it tastes like broth, because I'm going to use this pasta cooking liquid in the sauce. So I want to make sure that it has a good flavor to it, but it's not too salty like the ocean, because otherwise, as that cooks down and reduces inside the sauce with the pasta, it would make everything too salty. So we want to be very cautious of the salt content of that water. So I have, that's going. I'm going to pinch more salt to that. Good stuff. All right. That's cooking away. I'm going to add a little pasta. I'm feeling a little hungry right now. I'm going to add a little more. There we go. So there's about 8 ounces of pasta inside here, which is a solid 2 portions, unless you're a guy like me and you want to cook even more, because I'll eat it. I will use this. I'll use this afterwards to scoop that tortiglione out. Now, if you don't have tortiglione, that's fine. You could use rigatoni, as I said. You could use penne as well. It's all good. Oil is hot. I'm going to take a clove of this garlic, just add it to this pan, and I want a little bit, just a touch, of that flavor transfer of the garlic into that oil, and then we'll start to heat this up. Now, we'll heat up the tomato sauce inside of this tomato puree. So what we'll do here is a little bit of that garlic, that flavor you see is starting to transfer. It's cooking nicely. I'm gonna add a pinch, a very small pinch of oregano, just a touch. And I'm gonna add it to that oil because it's gonna really, and the oil isn't very hot. So it's very important to point that out. But I really like that transfer of flavor. I like this perfume that's being created. And when you're doing this at home, I think you'll get it straight away. It's special, it's nice. So off the fire, just to the side here, I'm gonna add some tomato puree. Now this is just strained tomatoes. It's a thing of beauty. So it's about 4 ounces of tomato. That strained tomato is not a sauce. Now it's a sauce because I'm adding flavors to it. Before it's just strained tomatoes. Now it's a sauce. I'm gonna add a little bit of this pasta cooking liquid as well. Now I think it's important to point out that when you're making some of these dishes, if you notice, I don't add oil, I don't add anything to this pasta water with the exception of salt. You don't need to add extra virgin olive oil to the water. If you have a quality pasta, and as long as your pasta water is boiling, your pasta will not stick. You heard it here first. So that's cooking away. That cook time is about 12 minutes. I'm gonna make sure that that pasta cooks about 85% of the way in the water, and then I'm gonna finish it in this sauce that we've created. So in this pan, we have extra virgin olive oil, a little bit of that 1 clove of garlic. We have the tomato that's been, this tomato from the box, so to speak. We have some dry oregano just for that little balance of flavor, which I love, that dry oregano flavor with eggplant in particular. We're gonna take the tortiglioni, we're gonna add it to this. We'll add a little bit of fresh basil. We'll finish it with some Parmesan cheese, a touch of butter just to kind of get it all moving and sexy. And then we'll top it on the plate with the ricotta salata as well. Super simple, straightforward dish. While that is all cooking, I'm gonna take a few leaves of this basil. I'm not gonna, you know, you don't have to do too much to this, right? I'm just gonna take it, I'm gonna tear it up. It doesn't have to be cut. If you wanna cut it, cut it. It could be torn. I really feel like this is a rustic dish, and this rusticity kind of speaks all the way through as far as I'm concerned. I really love, you know, the simplicity of a lot of these things. And I always say, in the words of Da Vinci, simplicity is the ultimate luxury. And I really feel that this one dish kind of encapsulates that more than many others. I just quote Da Vinci because that's what I do. I don't know if he said that or not, but whatever. All right, so I have this clove of garlic I'm gonna remove from this sauce. You don't wanna bite into that, although it is cooked all the way through. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt to this. Take into consideration though, there's salt in the pasta cooking liquid and there is salt in the eggplant itself. So we don't want to overdo it. We could always adjust afterwards on the plate, maybe a sprinkle of sea salt or something. But I use kosher salt, happy with kosher salt. I use it in all my, at home in the pasta water. This pasta is going to be another 7 minutes or so, it looks like. This sauce is cooking nicely. I'll adjust it so it doesn't over reduce with a little bit of that pasta water. Look at that, nice. Sometimes when this is happening, there's that residual sauce on the side that I like to scrape down, right? So all that is flavor, and you wanna capture as much of that flavor as you can. So I'm gonna take this ripped up basil and just add it to the sauce. There we go. Look at that. Pasta's 5 more minutes or so, 6 minutes, give or take. While that's going, I will microplane a little bit of this Parmesan cheese so that we could add it directly to the pasta. They always say that pasta waits for no one. So once it gets going, you gotta kind of move quickly. That's why I like to have all these things already done. So it's assembly, toss, finish, plate, eat. Done. Obligatory Parmesan cheese. Nice. That looks good. Check this pasta. So the pasta is ready. I'm gonna finish it in this sauce. I'm gonna drain off that residual liquid. If you don't have a spider like this is called a spider. If you don't have a spider like this, I like to use this with rigatoni because I feel like you can control the cook. If you don't have one of these, get a colander, save that pasta cooking liquid, strain it, and then you have that pasta cooking liquid to be able to adjust your sauce. But since I have this spider, I'm gonna do it like this. Now, look at that. I'm gonna turn this heat up nice and high. Pasta water is done. I'm gonna remove it. Actually, I'm gonna save some of it. There we go. If I need it, it's here. Parmesan cheese. This is good. This makes me happy. Here's the plate. All right. Now, you hear that sound, that perfect moisture content? It is coating the pasta. There's a little residual sauce on the bottom of the pan. I always feel like you want that there so you can grab a piece of bread and sop up what's on the plate. It's cooking nicely. All right, so pasta's done. I'm gonna add the eggplant. And once that's done, pasta's inside. Off the fire, no more heat. No more heat. I'm gonna add Parmesan cheese to it. Pasta's so fresh, it's jumping out of the pan. So I'm gonna add a touch of butter because I like the texture of it. Parmesan cheese and butter. Look at how beautiful the texture of this becomes. Again, once you start to add this dairy, you should see no more heat. No more heat on this, right? Flame is off. All right. Then, you hear that sound? That is the perfect texture. It's not too dry, it's not too wet, there's not too much sauce. It has a nice creamy texture to it. I'm gonna plate this up. All right, this is gonna make your friends and family happy, I promise. And then on the plate, once it's plated up, we're just gonna do some of this ricotta salata on top of that. I have a box grater here. And that box grater adds that beautiful texture of the actual cheese on top. And if you're feeling fancy, you could add a basil sprig on top. But let me tell you something. This is one of my favorite things to eat. It has a great depth of flavor for such a short cooking time. You'll be surprised of all the beautiful nuances in such a simple pasta. I really hope you like this as much as I do. It just makes me happy. Cheers.